The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with light from stars that had burned for billions of years. Across that endless ocean of space, voices carried in the form of radio waves, coded messages, and beams of energy. Some were greetings, some were warnings, and some were desperate cries for help. One such cry came from the Therial Union, a peaceful collection of alien worlds. For centuries, the Therial believed in art, trade, and exploration. They were builders, not warriors. But now, they're shining. Cities were burning. The Dral Dominion, a cruel and expanding empire, had swept across their border worlds like a storm. The Therial fleets, small and unprepared, were broken in battle after battle. Their colonies fell. Their people were enslaved. Their culture, their history, their very hope was being crushed. When the last Therial Council gathered in secret, they sent one final message. It was not aimed at any single ally, because no ally was strong enough to help them. Instead, they broadcasted a wide signal, a cry to anyone anywhere who might hear. The message was simple. It was not filled with grand speeches or clever words. It was a voice heavy with sorrow, pleading, "This is the Union of Therial. We are falling. Our homes are burning. If there is anyone who can hear this, anyone at all, help us." The signal left their system, carrying across light years. Most civilizations ignored it. Some dismissed it as a trap. Others pitied the Therial, but decided survival meant staying away. The galaxy was large, and every species had its own problems. No one wanted to risk angering the Dral, but the signal did not fade. It traveled farther until it reached a small, blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Earth. On Earth, the signal was first caught by an array of radio telescopes in South America. At first, scientists thought it was another strange burst from a pulsar or a natural cosmic event. But as they decoded the pattern, their excitement turned to shock. This was no random noise. It was a structured language, and not just a language, a plea for help. The scientists rushed the discovery to global leaders. Within hours, emergency. Meetings were held across governments and space agencies. Could it be real? If it was, humanity was not alone. Not only that, the universe out there was dangerous. The United Nations convened a special council. Representatives argued back and forth. Some demanded silence, warning that humanity was not ready. Others said this was history unfolding, a chance to step into the stars. One delegate said quietly, "If they are asking for help, then they are like us, alone, afraid, and desperate. Do we turn away from them, or do we answer?" The debate spread beyond governments. News channels picked up the story, sparking a storm across the internet. People filled forums and live streams with excitement and fear. Was it safe? Could humanity even do anything? Yet despite the uncertainty, millions felt the same pull in their hearts. Someone out there needed them. In a quiet observatory in New Mexico, a young astrophysicist named Dr. Elena Torres stared at the decoded message again and again. The voice was alien, yes, but in its rhythm, in its breaking tone, she heard something familiar. It was the same tone she remembered from news broadcasts years ago, when disasters struck Earth, when people begged for rescue across broken radios. She whispered to herself, "They sound like us." Her words spread among colleagues and then among military officers, pilots, and explorers. Slowly, an idea began to grow. Maybe Earth was small, maybe its technology was not the most advanced in the galaxy, but humanity had something else. A long history of facing impossible odds. They had survived wars, plagues, disasters, and the endless challenges of nature. Every generation had built themselves back up from hardship. Humanity had a spirit that refused to die. And so, while politicians still debated, volunteers began to rise. Engineers proposed designs for ships that could travel farther than any human craft before. Soldiers trained not for conquest, but for protection. Scientists studied the signal, working night and day to learn the alien language. Earth had always dreamed of reaching the stars. Now the stars were calling them, not with an invitation, but with a cry for help. Months passed. The world worked together in a way it had not done in decades. Rival nations shared technology. Old enemies sat at the same table. Factories once used for competition now built components side by side. Humanity was moving fast, driven not by greed, but by a single thought. Someone is waiting for us. The first fleet was small. Only 3 large ships, built partly from human invention and partly from scraps of reverse-engineered theories long considered impossible. They were not perfect, but they were ready enough to travel beyond Earth's solar system. Crews were chosen from volunteers around the world: pilots, doctors, linguists, soldiers, engineers. Some were young and daring, others seasoned and calm. Each one carried a heavy truth: they might never return. On the day of launch, billions of humans watched from Earth. The ships rose slowly, then vanished into the black sea of space. Families waved from cities, children cheered in schools, and old men and women whispered prayers. It was not just a mission anymore, it was a promise. Far away in the ruined capital of the Ethereal Union, survivors huddled in the dark. Their cities had fallen, their leaders gone. Hope was slipping like sand through their hands. Many whispered that the cry had been in vain, that no one had heard them, that the stars were silent. But high above their broken world, in the depths of space, a faint transmission crackled into life. "This is Earth. We hear you. Hold on." The voice was clear, strong, and utterly alien to them, yet filled with determination. For the first time in years, the Ethereal dared to lift their heads and believe. Somewhere, far beyond their knowledge, someone was coming. And though they did not know it yet, the galaxy would soon learn a truth whispered in fear and awe. Earth's so-called monsters had answered the call. The launch of Earth's ships had shaken the world. For the first time in history, humanity was not only looking at the stars, but stepping into them with purpose. Yet behind the excitement, there was fear. No one knew what waited out there. The message from the Ethereal Union spoke of war, conquest, and an enemy called the Droll Dominion. Humanity had only just begun its journey beyond the solar system. Could they really face something so powerful? In the United Nations headquarters, the Grand Chamber was filled with voices. Leaders from every nation sat in a circle, each with advisors whispering at their side. Giant screens displayed the decoded ethereal signal and the first response Earth had sent back. An older delegate from Europe stood and spoke firmly. "We have answered their cry, yes. But we must ask ourselves, can Earth truly help them? Our ships are new, untested. We have no fleets, no colonies, no alliances. If we go too far, we may bring danger back to our own world." A younger delegate from Africa rose in reply. "Danger already exists. The Droll Dominion is out there, conquering world after world. If we ignore this cry, then one day it will be our turn. The choice is simple. We help now, or we wait to be next." The room erupted into debate. Some leaders argued for caution. They wanted to observe, to send only small missions, to learn from a safe distance. Others argued for boldness. They said Earth's strength had always been found in action, not hesitation. Dr. Elena Torres, the astrophysicist who first studied the signal, was invited to speak. She was not a politician, but her voice carried weight. She looked around the room and said softly, "I have listened to their message many times. They are afraid, but they are also hoping. They do not ask for conquerors. They do not ask for leaders. They ask for help, and sometimes that is enough reason." Her words lingered in the air. While leaders debated, humanity itself had already begun to move. Across the globe, volunteers stepped forward. Former soldiers joined training camps, offering to fight if needed. Doctors and nurses applied to travel, saying they would treat the wounded no matter their shape or biology. Engineers worked on new designs to improve the ships already launched. Even artists and teachers wrote letters to be carried across the stars, messages of comfort for the ethereal people. At night, talk shows and news channels filled the airwaves with questions. What if the ethereal are not telling the truth? What if it is a trap? What if the Draal find us? Yet, among all the doubts, one simple belief grew stronger. Humanity could not remain silent. A child in Brazil asked on a live broadcast, if someone was drowning and we could throw them a rope, should we wait until we are stronger swimmers? Or should we throw it anyway? The clip spread worldwide, repeated again and again. Meanwhile, the 3 ships already launched continued their journey. On board the lead vessel, the Endeavour, Captain Malik Idris stood at the observation deck, watching the stars stream past. He had served in Earth's space programs for 20 years, but never like this. His crew was diverse, men and women from every continent, each one carrying the pride of their people. They were still weeks away from reaching the first Union coordinates, but the weight of the mission was heavy on their shoulders. The crew, trained every day, practicing drills, learning alien words from the decoded message, and preparing for whatever they might find. Some joked nervously to hide their fear, others stayed quiet. But one thing united them all. They were the first humans to answer a call beyond Earth. "Captain," said Lieutenant Reyes, the ship's navigator, "do you ever wonder if they'll even want us? To them we might look frightening." Idris gave a small smile. "Then let us show them what kind of monsters we are, not the kind that destroy, but the kind that protect." Back on Earth, the debate reached its peak. After weeks of discussion, the United Nations made a decision. Humanity would commit, not just with words, but with action. A new program would be built, the Earth Response Initiative. It would combine resources from every nation, creating more ships, training more crews, and sending supplies to aid the Ethereal Union. The announcement shook the galaxy. Unknown to Earth, the Draal Dominion had spies across many civilizations. When they heard that humans had responded to the Ethereal, they laughed at first. To them, Earth was nothing but a small, backward world, yet rumors about humanity had always lingered, rumors of a violent history, of resilience, of unpredictable cunning. The Draal leader sneered when told the news. "If the monsters of Earth truly come, we will crush them, as we have crushed all others." But deep in his mind, a seed of caution took root. The Ethereal Union, broken and desperate, received Earth's second message with disbelief. The words were short, but powerful. "We are sending more. Hold on. You are not alone." In a hidden shelter beneath their ruined capital, survivors wept when they heard it. Some could not believe a species they had never met would risk themselves for strangers. Others whispered that perhaps the old legends were true, that somewhere in the galaxy there were beings who thrived in chaos, who carried fire in their spirit. The Union leaders sent back a message of their own. "We do not know you. We do not understand you. But if you truly come, we welcome you." And so the course of history began to shift. Earth had made its choice. It would not remain silent. It would not wait for the danger to reach its own doorstep. In the weeks that followed, more ships began construction. Young people signed up for training. Families sent their blessings to sons and daughters who might never return. The world felt smaller now, as if all of humanity was one village preparing to help a distant neighbor. The debate was over. The decision was made. Humanity would stand beside the Ethereal Union, and though no one knew how the Draal Dominion would respond, one truth echoed in every heart. The monsters of Earth were rising, not to bring fear, but to bring hope. The journey through deep space was long, but for the crew of the Endeavor, every day felt heavier than the last. They were the first humans to travel this far, carrying not weapons of conquest, but a promise to answer the cry of a distant people. Yet none of them knew how they would be received. The galaxy already carried stories about Earth. To the older civilizations, humans were whispered about as a dangerous, unpredictable species. Their history was filled with wars, disasters, and struggles that had nearly destroyed them many times. And yet, each time they had survived. Some civilizations admired that resilience. Others feared it. Few trusted it. Captain Malik Idris stood at the front of the command deck, watching the endless star field on the main screen. His crew worked quietly, their hands moving across glowing controls. Each face carried determination, but behind their eyes lived the same question. What will the Therial think of us? "Captain," said Lieutenant Reyes, her voice steady but curious, "we'll be arriving at the Union coordinates in 6 hours. Do you think they'll accept us?" Idris folded his arms. "We're not here to be accepted. We're here because they asked for help. Whether they trust us or not, we'll prove ourselves by what we do." His words gave comfort, but only for a moment. When the Endeavor finally exited faster-than-light travel, the crew gasped at the sight before them. The Union world of Koresh lay below, a planet scarred by war. From orbit, they saw burned cities, broken towers, and vast stretches of smoke where once green forests had stood. Alien ships, battered and barely holding together, circled the planet as if shielding it from more attacks. "This is worse than I imagined," whispered Dr. Elena Torres. Her eyes softened as she studied the devastated landscape. "They weren't exaggerating in their message. They've lost everything," a voice crackled through the comms, rough and hesitant. "Unidentified vessels. This is the Therial Union Defense Fleet. State your origin and purpose immediately." Captain Idris straightened and spoke clearly. "This is Earth Vessel Endeavor. We come in answer to your distress signal. We bring aid and support." There was a long silence. Then a different voice replied, sharper, almost fearful. "Earth? You are human? The stories say your kind is dangerous." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected mistrust, but the hesitation in the alien's voice carried more than doubt. It carried fear. The humans were granted permission to land, though the Therial made their conditions strict. No weapons displayed, no aggressive movements, no hidden intentions. The Endeavor descended through the smoky skies, its hull glowing against the atmosphere. When it touched down on a damaged landing platform, a crowd of Therial soldiers and civilians waited at a distance. The Therial were tall and slender, with silver-toned skin and luminous eyes. Their movements were graceful, but their expressions were cautious. Mothers pulled their children close, elders whispered warnings, and soldiers kept their weapons at the ready. Not pointed, but close enough to remind the humans that they were not trusted. Dr. Torres was the first to step out, carrying no weapon, only a translator device. She raised her hands in peace. The Therial commander, a figure in worn armor with a scarred face, stepped forward. "You are human," he said, his voice low. "We have heard of your kind. You fight among yourselves. You destroy your own world. Why would you come here? Why would you risk your lives for us?" Captain Idris moved beside Elena. His voice was calm but strong. "Because you asked. Because no one else answered. Because we know what it means to be at the edge of survival. We will not turn away from you." The commander studied him carefully, then glanced back at his people. Their eyes were filled with both suspicion and a faint spark of hope. The first days of contact were difficult. The Therial placed the humans in guarded camps, giving them only limited freedom. Rumors spread quickly across the Union. Some said the humans were mercenaries seeking profit. Others said they were invaders using false kindness as cover. But while the leaders argued, ordinary Therial began to see something different. Human engineers repaired broken generators in the ruined city. Human doctors treated wounded civilians with steady hands. Human soldiers carried supplies side by side with alien workers, asking for nothing in return. Slowly, the walls of fear began to weaken. The real test came sooner than expected. On the third week after their arrival, alarms blared across Koresh. The Droll Dominion had returned. A fleet of raiders appeared in orbit, intent on finishing what they had started. The Therial defense ships scrambled to respond, but they were too few, too broken. Panic spread across the city. Captain Idris gathered his crew. "We didn't come here to hide. If we stand by and let them fall, then every word we've spoken is worthless. We're going up there." The humans requested permission to join the battle. The Therial Council hesitated, but in their desperation, they agreed. The Endeavor lifted, off, its engines roaring. The crew braced themselves as they entered the fight. The Droll ships were larger, heavier, and designed for war. By comparison, the Endeavor was a fragile mix of Earth's first attempts at advanced spaceflight, but humans had something the Droll did not expect: creativity under pressure. The battle was fierce, while Therial ships fought in tight, predictable formations. The Endeavor moved like no other vessel in the sky. Its pilots improvised maneuvers, darting between enemy fire, using wreckage as cover, even turning debris into weapons. When a Droll cruiser targeted the Therial capital, the Endeavor charged straight at it, releasing a burst of improvised drones created from spare parts. The swarm blinded the cruiser's sensors long enough for Therial cannons to strike and destroy it. On the ground, civilians watched in awe as the human ship moved with reckless bravery. Soldiers whispered that no Therial pilot would dare fly so dangerously, so unpredictably. For the first time in years, the Droll were forced to retreat. When the battle ended, the Therial commander approached Captain Idris on the landing platform. His stern face was softer now. "I thought you were monsters," the commander admitted. "I thought you would bring only more chaos to our suffering. But today, you saved us. You saved people we had already given up on." Captain Idris met his gaze. "Maybe we are monsters, but we choose who we fight for." Behind the commander, the crowd of Therial citizens began to cheer, not in fear, but in gratitude. Children waved, soldiers saluted, and elders bowed their heads. Humanity had not erased the fear in their hearts, but it had planted something stronger. Hope. That night, in the ruins of Koresh, Dr. Torres looked up at the alien sky. She whispered to herself, "We didn't just answer their cry. We've shown them that monsters can stand for something greater." The Therial had called them dangerous. The Droll had dismissed them as weak. But both would learn the same truth in time. The monsters of Earth had arrived, and they would not leave the galaxy unchanged. The battle above Koresh had changed everything. For the first time in many years, the Droll Dominion had been forced to retreat. The Therial Union, broken and weary, had seen hope in the actions of strangers, and the strangers were humans, the very monsters the galaxy had long whispered about. Yet one victory did not mean safety. The Droll were powerful, patient, and merciless. Everyone knew they would return, and when they did, their armies would come in far greater numbers. The weeks after the battle, the humans and Therial worked together, though trust did not come easily. Many Therial still looked at humans with unease. Their history books spoke of humanity's violent past, and their legends painted Earth as a dangerous, untamed world. But every day, the humans chipped away at that fear. Engineers repaired shields. The Therial had abandoned as useless. Doctors taught new medical methods to alien healers. Soldiers trained side by side with Therial fighters, teaching them to adapt, to improvise, to never give up even when outnumbered. Still, doubts remained. One evening in the shattered council hall of Koresh, the Therial leaders gathered. Captain Idris and Dr. Elena Torres were invited to join. The council leader, an elder named Sarath, rose to speak. His voice carried both wisdom and weariness. "You humans fought with courage. You saved our people. But courage alone will not stop the Dominion. They have destroyed empires stronger than yours. Why should we believe Earth can change what we could not?" The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Captain Idris. He stood slowly, his gaze steady. "Because we are not afraid to try the impossible," Idris said. "Your fleets fight with order, with patterns. The Draal know those patterns. They predict them, and they crush you with them. But humans—" He paused, his lips curling into the smallest smile. "We don't follow the script. We write new ones, even in the middle of battle," the council murmured uneasily. They were builders, thinkers, lovers of peace. The idea of fighting without order, without rules, was strange to them. But some, deep in their hearts, began to wonder if perhaps this madness was what the galaxy needed. Far away, in the dark reaches of space, the Draal Dominion was already planning its return. The Draal leader, Supreme Commander Varric, studied the reports of the battle at Koresh. He tapped his clawed fingers against the table, his eyes narrowing. "Humans," he hissed. "I had heard the stories. I did not believe them. Now I see the truth. They fight like fire, wild, spreading, uncontrollable." An advisor bowed. "Shall we crush them, my lord?" Varric's mouth twisted into a smile. "Of course, but we must not underestimate them. Fire is dangerous when ignored. We will strike hard enough to remind the galaxy who rules it." Orders were sent. A massive fleet began to move. Back on Koresh, the humans continued to prepare. Dr. Torres worked tirelessly with Therial scientists, sharing Earth's methods of innovation. Together they built devices the Therial had never considered. Simple. Tools, clever traps, and new ways to power damaged machines. Meanwhile, Captain Idris drilled his soldiers alongside Therial fighters. At first, the Therials struggled with human methods. They were used to discipline, to perfect formations, but the humans taught them to adapt. "Don't think about the plan," one human sergeant said during a joint exercise. "Think about what's in front of you. If it changes, you change. If the enemy blocks your path, you find another." The Therial found the lessons frustrating, even chaotic. But slowly, they began to see results. Battles were not only about strength, they were about creativity. The real test came sooner than expected. Scouts reported that a massive Draal fleet was approaching, larger than anything the Union had faced in years. Its goal was clear. Not just to conquer Koresh, but to make an example of it. The council panicked. Some argued they should flee and scatter across the stars. Others said they should surrender and hope for mercy. But Captain Idris stood before them and shook his head. "If you run, the Draal will hunt you one by one until none remain. If you surrender, they will break you. There is only one path left: fight. Not as you always have, but as we will show you." His words struck like lightning. The Union leaders hesitated, then slowly nodded. Together, humans and Therial began to prepare a plan. When the Draal fleet arrived, it filled the sky like a storm. Their ships were dark and massive, bristling with weapons. The people of Koresh trembled, for they had seen this sight many times before, and always it ended in defeat. But this time was different. The Therial fleet rose to meet them, not in rigid formations, but in unpredictable patterns. Human pilots flew alongside them, darting in and out of enemy fire. The Endeavor led the charge, weaving through the chaos, drawing the Dominion ships into traps set by smaller Therial vessels. On the ground, human and Therial fighters worked together. They turned ruined buildings into ambush points, set clever decoys, and used every scrap of material as a weapon. The Draal expected order. Instead, they found confusion. For the first time, the Dominion's commanders hesitated. In the middle of the battle, Dr. Torres activated an experimental device she and the Therial had built together. Using old satellites and human improvisation, they created a network that scrambled the Draal's communications. Suddenly, Dominion ships were cut off from each other, their formations broken. The humans struck hard at that moment. The Endeavor launched a desperate maneuver, flying straight through the heart of the Dominion fleet, forcing them to split their fire. The ship shook violently, but Idris and his crew held steady. "Hold on!" Idris shouted as alarms blared. "If we break them here, they'll remember this day forever," and they did. Against all odds, the Draal began to fall back. Their fleet, so confident, was thrown into disarray by the unthinkable. Humans fighting beside the Therial, refusing to follow the old rules of war. When the last Dominion ship fled, leaving Koresh still standing, the people erupted in joy. For the first time in living memory, the Draal had not simply been resisted. They had been beaten back. After the battle, the Therial commander stood before the humans. His voice was filled with awe. "You fight like no one else," he said. "We feared you. We called you monsters. But today, you showed us that monsters can also be guardians." Captain Idris simply replied, "We're not here to be heroes. We're here because you asked for help. That's all." But even as he spoke, he knew something had changed. The galaxy would no longer see humans as a distant, primitive species. They would see them as something new, unpredictable, dangerous, and above all, unwilling to stand by while others suffered. The turning point had come, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The news of Koresh's victory spread like fire across the stars. For the first time, the Draal Dominion had been forced to retreat. The galaxy whispered in disbelief. How could a broken union and a primitive world like Earth achieve what stronger empires had failed to do? But the Draal were not finished. They were humiliated, and humiliation was something the Dominion never allowed to stand. From their fortress world, Supreme Commander Varric ordered a massive campaign, not a raid, not a test. This would be a final strike, a fleet so vast it would crush Koresh and erase both the Therial and the humans from history. "Let the galaxy see," Varric growled to his generals. "Let them know resistance is foolish. We will make Koresh an example." On Koresh, the Therial Union prepared for the storm. They knew the Dominion would not forgive their defiance. The humans knew it too. The small victory had given them courage, but courage alone would not be enough now. In the underground council chamber, Therial leaders gathered with Captain Idris, Dr. Elena Torres, and the human officers. A hologram displayed the incoming fleet, hundreds of Dominion warships, larger and deadlier than anything Koresh could hope to match. The room was silent as everyone stared at the overwhelming numbers. Finally, a Therial counselor whispered, "It is impossible. We cannot fight this." Idris leaned forward, his voice steady. "It is impossible if we fight their way. But if we fight our way, if we use what they cannot predict, then maybe, just maybe, we can survive." The Union leaders looked doubtful, but the humans had already shown the power of unpredictability. After long debate, they agreed. There would be no surrender. They would fight. Preparation began immediately. The humans worked alongside Therial engineers, creating traps and defenses unlike anything the Dominion had seen before. Old satellites were turned into guided weapons. Ruined buildings became hidden strongholds. Even the vast rivers of Koresh were rigged with explosives and diversions. Dr. Torres led a team to finish the communication disruptor network. If we can cut their fleet into pieces, she explained, they'll be confused. And confusion is our best ally. Meanwhile, Idris trained his soldiers and pilots relentlessly. Remember, he told them, we're not stronger than them, but we're harder to predict. Keep moving, keep changing. Never let them know what comes next. The Therial fighters struggled at first, but slowly they adapted. They began to loosen their rigid ways, to fight with flexibility. For the first time, they began to understand the strange human style of war. Then the day came. The sky above Koresh darkened with the arrival of the Dominion fleet. Hundreds of warships blotted out the stars, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The ground shook as the people of Koresh watched in terror. The Union fleet, smaller and patched together, rose to meet them. At the center of it all flew the Endeavor, Earth's proud vessel, its crew bracing for what might be their last battle. Captain Idris stood tall on the bridge. His crew looked to him, their fear hidden beneath determination. "Listen to me," Idris said, his voice calm. "We may not see Earth again, but remember why we are here. We are not fighting for conquest. We are not fighting for glory. We are fighting because someone called for help, and that is enough. Now let's show them what it means to face humans." The battle began with thunder. The Dominion's weapons lit the sky, hammering at the Therial defenses. Ships exploded in bursts of fire. The Union fleet fought back bravely, but they were outnumbered many times over. Then the humans struck. The Endeavor darted forward, weaving through the enemy lines with maneuvers no Dominion pilot could imagine. Therial fighters followed, breaking their old formations and striking from unexpected angles. Human engineers triggered hidden mines in space, scattering debris that damaged Dominion cruisers. On the ground, Dominion dropships descended to invade the cities. But they found not helpless civilians, but a maze of traps. Streets collapsed under them. Fake signals drew them into ambushes. Therial and human soldiers struck from hidden positions, vanishing before counterattacks could arrive. Still, the battle was brutal. For every Dominion ship destroyed, more arrived. The sky blazed with fire. In the middle of the chaos, Dr. Torres's team activated the disruptor network. Across the battlefield, Dominion ships suddenly lost contact with each other. Their fleets, once precise and unified, became scattered and confused. "Now!" Idris shouted. The Endeavor led a daring charge straight into the Dominion center. It was madness. No sane commander would risk flying into the heart of such a vast fleet. But humans were not known for sanity in battle. They were known for daring. The maneuver split the Dominion lines. Therial ships struck from all sides, turning confusion into disaster. On the ground, soldiers saw the Dominion wavering for the first time. A cheer rose across the city. "They can bleed! They can break!" But the Dominion did not give up easily. Their flagship, a massive dreadnought, descended into the fight. Its weapons blazed, tearing through Union defenses. The Therial Council cried out in despair. If the flagship reached the surface, Koresh would fall. Captain Idris knew what had to be done. "Set a course," he ordered. Lieutenant Reyes looked at him in shock. "Captain, you can't mean—" "I mean exactly that," Idris said firmly. "We're going to stop that flagship, even if it kills us." The crew exchanged fearful glances, but none argued. They knew the risk, and they accepted it. The Endeavor dove straight toward the dreadnought. The human ship was tiny compared to the giant Dominion vessel, but it flew with the speed and fury of a predator. "We're going to use their size against them," Idris said. "When we reach the hull, we'll detonate the drone swarm. It will overload their shields. Then the Therial can finish the job." The ship shook violently as enemy fire struck its hull. Systems flickered, alarms screamed. But the crew held. "On! Closer! Closer! Drones ready!" Dr. Torres said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Release them!" Idris shouted. The Endeavor unleashed its swarm. Hundreds of drones swarmed the dreadnought's surface. overloading its shields with blinding explosions. The massive ship staggered. "Now!" Idris roared into the comms. The Therial fleet concentrated all their fire on the dreadnought. For a moment, it seemed impossible. Then, with a blinding flash, the great ship cracked apart, torn into flaming pieces. The Dominion fleet faltered. Without their flagship, their command structure collapsed. Ships broke formation, fleeing into the dark. Koresh had survived. When the smoke cleared, the Union and human survivors stood together, weary but victorious. The people of Koresh filled the streets, cheering and weeping. For the first time in generations, they had not only survived the Dominion's wrath, they had defeated it. The Therial commander clasped Captain Idris's hand. "Today the galaxy will remember. The monsters of Earth faced the Dominion and stood unbroken." Idris looked out at the stars. His voice was quiet but filled with pride. "We are not monsters. We are human, and that means we never give up." The Battle of Koresh was over, but the war was far from done. Still, on that day, a message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Earth's monsters had struck fear into the Dominion and given hope to everyone else.